Talmud, Emmanuel, Chapter 3. Johannes, John the Initiator. 1. At that time there came Johannes, the Initiator, the one who carries out the initiation, who performed the initiation in accordance with the teaching of the prophets, and he taught at the banks of the Jordan, at the edge of the wilderness near the Dead Sea. Explanation. An initiation is regulated by certain customs, and in the case of Johannes, the initiator, the initiation custom served to introduce the human beings who turned to the old teaching of the prophets into the teaching, and to accept them into the circle of those having knowledge of the teaching and the truth. Since time immemorial, the custom of initiation signifies an acceptance regulated by certain customs of a newcomer into a status community, age community, teaching community, or knowledge community, as well as into a secret society or something similar, particularly the initiation acceptance of adolescents into the circle of adults among the primitive peoples. Also, through the custom of a certain self-learning with regard to a certain knowledge, a self-initiation or admission into the learning material takes place. The initiation in no wise has anything to do with baptism, as is wrongly attributed to Johannes the Initiator by the Christian religion, for he did not carry out any baptism through which original sin is supposed to be banished, as is irrationally taught by the falsified New Testament and by the Christian Catholic religion, but only the traditional custom of initiation acceptance into the teaching of the prophets. Baptism and original sin. Baptism corresponds in its origin to a driving out of devils for the purpose of the dissolution of original sin, which was allegedly committed by Adam and Eve. According to Christian irrational teaching, original sin came about through the first human beings, Adam and Eve, and the sinfulness of the human race is supposed to have been put into effect by their fall into sin. According to Catholic religious teaching, this exists in the absence of holy divine grace. Through baptism, this absence is supposed to be brought to an end, but not the result of original sin, so death and carnal desire. According to the Protestant view, original sin is not eradicated by baptism, but is effective in every human being as a propensity to sin. Concupiscence as the origin of the actual sins and genuine guilt. Baptism is, among all Christian communities and churches, a common rite of acceptance of the believers into the Christian community, church. Baptism represents the sacrament, oath of allegiance, consecration, sanctification, obligation, which, in its theological dimension, is supposed to establish the special and supposedly indissoluble fellowship of the one baptized with God. As an act of divine service, a baptism is performed within the scope of a baptismal liturgy under the name of the child or adult to be baptized. This is associated with a prayer and a confession of faith in a baptismal formula guided by the Trinity. 3 in 1 equals Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. In the early church, as well as today in the Eastern churches, baptism occurs by immersing the one being baptized, who is standing in the baptismal wash basin 3 times, While in almost all Christian communities and churches of Western tradition, baptism by the pouring of holy water on the head 3 times is common. Among the Baptists, baptism is carried out by the whole body being immersed in water. The validly administered baptism is unrepeatable and consists of the sprinkling of the body with water or immersion of the body into water, as well as the speaking of the Trinitarian baptismal formula. Baptism is carried out as a rule by a so-called priest, but even in the absence of a priest, it can be carried out in exceptional cases, such as for human beings to be baptized who are in danger of death by any human being in the form of a baptism in extremis, if this one has the intention to do that which the supposed Jesus Christ or the Christian church and the Christian faith wants to have done. In the early time of the church, baptism was carried out in accordance with a previous baptismal instruction, only as adult baptism. But since the 3rd century, child baptism increasingly prevailed. At the present time, adult baptism is still practiced by most Christian churches and communities, as for example by the Baptists and Mennonites, etc. 2. In Johannes, the Initiator, the one who carries out the initiation, taught and performed the custom of initiation in accordance with the teaching of the prophets, and in accordance with the old laws of the Ishwish. And he also taught the teaching of the prophets, according to which the way to knowledge was to be prepared, and according to which one who was to be introduced via the initiation right into the circle of the knowing ones was to be accepted. 3. He taught that the Ishwish's laws must be followed because he is the sole ruler of this human species, and his laws and recommendations are also those of the creation and nature. 4. And he taught that immeasurably higher above the Ishwish stands the creation, the source of the worlds and firmaments, outer space universe, and the created creation's living beings. 5. And so he taught that the genderless creation is the mystery of all mysteries, the unfathomable. And so death and life, light and darkness, the remaining, the creational existence equal being, and the non-remaining, the transient, equal being and non-being. And so he taught another time that the Ishwish himself, the ruler of this human species, holds the creation in venerability. 7. And some of the people from Judea and some people of Jerusalem went forth to Johannes, the Initiator, acknowledging the wisdom of the old laws of the Ishwish and the prophets. In a small group, let themselves be led by him in the custom of the initiation rite at the banks of the Jordan. 8. Johannes, the Initiator, wore a garment made from camel's hair and a leather belt around his loins. His food consisted of locusts and wild honey. 9. While he was initiating a small number of the people, some Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes came to him, who humiliated him with malicious talk. I'll stop here, and I wish you all a good day, and Salome.